Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Cambodia Global Dialogue of Southeast Asia TV. My name is Siphana. Today we have the pleasure to have in our show a distinguished professional in the area of agriculture, but more particularly in organic agriculture. The theme of today's session will be covering about organic agriculture. Agriculture is the cornerstone of the Cambodian economy. Let's face it, if we do simple math, we have 14 million Cambodians, 10 of us are working the land, are farmers. So you're talking about 10 million people, working to feed 14 million people. But agriculture is there. It's great. We are rice export surplus now. We are producing many other crops. But the interesting thing is that not many people understand organic agriculture. It's a lot of myth about it. Maybe, Andrew, before we go to the substantive, the dialogue, perhaps you could say a bit about yourself, and so this way give the context a bit about, for the audience.
Thank you, Siphana. It's a pleasure to be with you on the show. We've known each other for a long time. My name is Andrew McNaughton. I'm a Canadian. I came here just after UNTAC with the Canadian International Development Research Centre. We did a lot of development programming in those days. In particular, we supported with FAO the Integrated Pest Management Project, which now has trained thousands of Cambodians in what I like to call scientific agriculture. Now I am a consultant and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of a new company called Mekong Rain Natural Foods. And we are focused on organic production, in particular with cashew nuts, which is a real opportunity in Cambodia.
Speaking of organic agriculture, there's a lot of myth about it. And perhaps before, I think we should clarify this myth. What is organic agriculture compared to normal agriculture? But speak in plain.
Yes, I'll try. It's actually quite simple. The word organic originally refers to life or living things. Now there are many other meanings associated with it, but for agriculture it really is important to remember that organic refers to living things. And organic agriculture is one form, one of several forms, of what I like to call sustainable, or indeed scientific agriculture. Agriculture that's based on a quite sophisticated understanding of the natural agro-ecosystem that the farmer is working with. So for example, the IPM program that I mentioned trained farmers to observe and study their fields to see the interaction between the pest insects and what we like to call the natural enemies, the spiders and the frogs and the birds, which eat the pest organisms. And the farmers acquire skills in improving the opportunity for the natural enemies to take care of the pests in their fields. But they do that by learning to understand what's actually going on in the field by observing. So the organic agriculture is able to avoid using the poisonous chemicals which are so common in what we call conventional agriculture by enhancing the natural enemies. If pesticides are needed, if something gets out of control, there are a lot of natural plant products that can be used. You have one in Cambodia called neem tree, Azadirachta. Extracts of neem can be sprayed on the crop and that will kill the pests. And the neem extract breaks down very quickly and doesn't go up the food chain and poison people. The other important aspect about organic agriculture is its environmental impacts on a broader scale. One of the major sources of excess CO2 going into the atmosphere over the last decades and resulting largely in climate change, global warming, has been the breakdown of the humus, the organic matter in the soil, caused by chemical agriculture. So if we're going to restore these natural balances, if we're going to slow down global warming, We need to move agriculture back to systems that are more in harmony with the natural systems in the soil.
I see. It's quite interesting because when you say about organic agriculture, I don't think I could claim that if I'm farming something that I could say my agriculture product is certified. I mean, there have to be some external body that are qualified. So
organic
how does it work?
has two meanings, right? One is what I just described in terms of working with natural systems, and the other is a market aspect. If I'm a consumer and I'm concerned about these things and I want to buy products that are grown in harmony with nature and are safe, how do I know that what's being offered to me in the supermarket is in fact compliant with those things? In most societies, for food safety, you have government inspection, third-party inspection to make sure things are safe. We have the same thing in the organic agriculture domain, where we have certification systems, people who come and look at your farm and say, yes, I can see that you are keeping with the standards, and they give you a logo that you can put on your product label that says, okay, this has been inspected by somebody qualified and licensed to do the inspection. Without that certification, you really can't call a product organic.
So, certification entails costs, of course. Cambodia is a least developed country. We are still considered poor. Our farmers are still poor. Do you think it's profitable for Cambodian farmer to consider organic farming?
Organic farming has been successful and profitable in many other countries, including for smallholder farmers. The certification costs for smallholders are made much smaller by using group certification. So you organize the farmers into an association and you certify the whole association at one time. So the cost of certification is greatly reduced that way. The certification costs are passed along to the consumer. Consumer who wants to buy safe products, organic products, is prepared to pay a little more, and the value chain of the organic system passes a fair share of that back to the farmer. The costs of production for organic farming, research all over the world shows they're about the same as chemical agriculture, unless you've been doing chemical agriculture for several years, and then there's a conversion period of 2 or 3 years where the profits go down. But for Cambodia, where in many systems there hasn't been a lot of pesticide use, the opportunity to convert very quickly to organic agriculture is there, and for the farmers to make a profit, particularly if Cambodia is able to benefit from the international marketplace for organic product.
Speaking of, we talk a lot about the process and everything, but to me, I'm looking that Cambodia is primarily an agricultural society. Right? There are many different agriculture products, rice, cashew nut, and corn, and cassava, and many other things. But, you know, when you look at organic, I see two things. One is national market, and one is international market. Now, my first question is, you know, what sort of product, agriculture product, that will have the potential, you know, to be organic, that can fetch a higher price, you know, whether for domestic or for export, right?
Okay, well, it's interesting over the last nearly a decade now that organic has been developing in Cambodia. What we find is that chemical-free rice and vegetables are acceptable in the domestic market. People are prepared to pay 5–10% higher prices for products which they believe to be free of chemical pesticides. They're aware of these things because of education that's been done by various programs over the last couple of decades. So there is a domestic market. There is an international market for a number of other what we could call luxury products. In particular for Cambodia, there are opportunities in pepper. We have this Kampot pepper, and now we have Cambodian pepper that's got geographic certification.
Yes.
And so pepper's a real possibility. Cashew nuts is one that's particularly important to me. We're working in cashew nuts. There's 100,000 tons a year of cashew nuts that go outside the country for processing, and no value added gained here. Thousands of jobs. The organic cashew market offers a significant opportunity for a niche market, export to Europe, North America, Australia, and now increasingly Asia, China, Singapore. So cashew nuts is the next one amongst the priorities. I would say that some of the specialty fruits, Cambodia produces particularly fine durian with a regional market, and there's a market for organic durian and the potential for Cambodia to produce those. There are many other products. In Australia, they produce organic beef. I think that's a little farther down the track for the Cambodian situation. So I would say that the most interesting ones at this point are rice, pepper, cashew nuts, and luxury fruits, specialty fruits.
Ah, okay, interesting. Well, I mean, if you look at the statistic in trade in organic product, it's close to 30 billion worldwide.
Worldwide, and growing substantially every year.
Yes.
The other interesting thing about the organic market is that it's relatively recession resistant.
Because?
Well, it's interesting. What we observe in cashew nuts is that in the last 3 or 4 recessions, particularly this last one, the price went down a little bit and then recovered very quickly. And what we surmise, nobody's sure, is that people eat out less. They go to the market and buy food and cook at home. And when they're in the market, they treat themselves with a special little luxury because they've been such good people and not gone out and spent all that money.
Okay.
And cashew nuts are a favorite luxury snack food. But people who are interested in organic they buy organic food because of a belief, and they like to vote with their money. So they continue to buy organic products even when the prices go up somewhat in recessionary times. When their ability to buy goes down, they continue to buy. The prices stay stable.
Well, in Cambodia, what part of the country that have already produced, for example, rice, organic rice, or organic cashew, for example?
GTZ did organic rice programs some years back. They've stopped doing it now. They had quite successful organic rice production in Kampot and in Kampong Thom, and there's been some in Battambang as well with Danita money. Unfortunately, the cycle of donor funding comes to an end always, and these programs have somewhat withered. The farmer associations are still there. The farmers still would like to do what they're doing, but we need resources. I think private sector investment at this time to bring that organic rice back into a possibility for Cambodia as an export product. I think it has real potential, but it's going to require somebody with the staying power to take a 5-year investment horizon and say, okay, we're going to work with this. Cashew nuts is a little easier because most of the cashew farmers, not all, most are poor and haven't been buying pesticides for their cashew orchards. So the conversion from traditional to organic can be done quite quickly in 1 year. We've been able in this past couple of years to certify nearly 1,000 organic cashew farmers.
Yes.
And we are getting ready in the coming year to process those cashew nuts in Cambodia for the export market. Pepper. Pepper is also a perennial crop, can be certified fairly quickly. There's several organizations, Kurata Pepper and FarmLink in Kampot, that are working on getting pepper into the international market. So it's a real possibility. The fruits, durian, small bananas, mangoes. Cambodia has great mangoes. Not a lot of work has been done yet. The potential is very much there. These are, I think, opportunities for private sector investment to come in and say, okay, we're going to take on this subsector, this crop, and we're going to make something national and internationally interesting out of it.
I understand there is a association, the Cambodian Organic Agriculture Association, that you sit on the board. What is their current activity, and what's their contribution to the development of Cambodian organic agriculture?
Okay, CORA is a membership organization. It has both private sector and NGO participants, and it has government people that participate in some of the meetings. Its objective really is to promote and educate about the possibilities for organic agriculture in Cambodia. CORA has developed a set of organic standards for Cambodia, which are a little bit less strict than the international ones, but still consistent with the international ones, so that we have a learning curve for the domestic market. CORA is currently preparing to engage with policymakers on what can be done to promote these ideas and to make something beneficial for Cambodian society and economy out of it. We're training farmers. We have a website, cora.org, and I should say that we have still support from donor organizations. We're getting good support from the International Finance Corporation and from the German DED. We had support from Danida in the past, and we are increasingly self-funded through our membership dues.
So potential is there. It's clear. I mean, but to me, how to get there, and it's more the how to get there that is difficult sometimes. You know. So I say, what will be the certain of the constraint that you think, if we want to move full speed, or at least on a much larger scale for organic agriculture, the various constraints that you've seen we're facing?
Well, I think we have to say first that government has been very positive about organic agriculture. Both the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Commerce. Commerce has a clean and green export policy in its framework. The Minister of Agriculture is frequently heard to speak about organic agriculture. So at the top levels, we have recognition by government that this is an opportunity. What we don't have is effective programming to implement it. And so there's a gap between sort of an idea that has been accepted and the policy and program development that's necessary to implement it. So I would like to see that addressed through dialogue, through donor support to policy formulation exercises. Cambodian government staff are now, pretty good at figuring out what policy issues are and what needs to be done to solve problems. We look forward to that happening soon. At the same time, the donors who have for years been promoting organic, sustainable, environmentally friendly agriculture need to stay with it. It's hard for donor organizations to take a 10-year horizon. It's pretty hard to stay longer than 3 years on a project, and that has been a serious problem for the development of these ideas in Cambodia. So we hope to see donor programs like IFC, like the EU program, staying with it and continuing. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, I think the private sector needs to take a closer look. They're beginning to see that investment in agriculture and agribusiness in Cambodia has, the risk framework is now a lot less than it was. The business enabling environment is more friendly. they need to see that specialty agriculture, and particularly organic agriculture, offers an opportunity for viable investment and come to it.
It was very reassuring that to hear that the private sector is taking a keen interest. My understanding is that now there are various equity funds, who are targeting the agriculture sector, for example. The Royal government have recently launched the rice export policy,
right.
and these are the sort of stimulus to send a message to the outside world, whether it be the development community in terms of realignment of their policy to support the government priority objective, but as well is more a message to the private sector out there to say, look, gentlemen, we have a clear orientation to the agriculture sector, and here's an opportunity for you to invest. I understand Australia, for example, is putting major, equity fund to invest into agriculture, for example, and so are a few other equity funds that are moving to Cambodia. Agriculture is definitely in their parameter. But concretely, I would say that if you look at the market potential we do have, the understanding from the government policy perspective, they start to appreciate already. I remember 5 or 6 years ago, we're still struggling to get organic to be reflected in political speeches. And
we
now
succeeded.
it is. Now we succeeded.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that, ultimately, it's a good policy have to be followed by a good action plan, implementable plan. And if you take, for example, the recent rice export policy, it's clear we have a whole matrix of implementable action plan, and it's much easier to attract private sector as much as development partner, including civil society, to move into support. So in this context, I'm very optimistic. Very optimistic.
I would very much like to see the kind of policy analysis and action planning that's gone into rice go into some other sectors. Of course, my own particular interest is the cashew sector.
Yes.
But I think that it might be worth taking a look at organic agriculture as a whole in that kind of a pattern. You have the Supreme National Economic Council, you have other policy bodies. Getting them to start understanding the opportunity and the constraints and the way forward, I think would be a very positive thing.
Yes. Well, for sure, I think we have to understand that the reality of this world post-global financial crisis is that government will, I would say, I will be very happy to see it stabilize. Tourism, will always be, ups and downs depending on bird flu, avian flu, SARS, and other situation in neighboring country that is affecting the flow of tourism. But for a country that is primarily agrarian society, I think we have to learn from other country. For example, neighboring Vietnam, neighboring Thailand, neighboring Malaysia have all started, the economic foundation, prosperity foundation based on agriculture. And to me, the fact that we have managed in the last 4 or 5 years to achieve rice production surplus, to have other commodity surplus, cassava is another area that I think have tremendous potential. It's a matter for us to enter into a SPS agreement, for example, with China.
SPS is a major limitation
on organic?
Well, this whole business of SPS sanitary and phytosanitary inspection for food products is an area where Cambodia still lags behind. You've had a lot of good advice from a lot of people on how to get your food systems improved to the level where you can get, for example, products into the European Union and pass their sanitary inspection. So that's an aspect of
Yes.
this that needs to be attended to, very much so.
But for SPS, I think for certain product, it's probably much easier to achieve. Like, for example, rice is less stringent in
Sure.
certain SPS.
Fish
But
is
for-
more difficult.
Yes, but for cashew nut, for example, you know, I understand that the issue of the aflatoxin, for example, which is, do we have such a facility in Cambodia to certify such a certificate?
Well, there's a number of things there. First of all, the organic production, because you have to certify the organic status, that means that you have to have inspection that goes all the way down the value chain, all the way to the individual farmer's field. So you have already traceability built into the system, and traceability is increasingly a requirement for access to developed country markets. So sanitary and phytosanitary systems and certification get built into it along at the same time. Aflatoxin is one of many food safety issues. It is not a big problem for cashew nuts, but it is required that you certify that your product is aflatoxin free. At present, as far as I'm aware, there isn't a Cambodian laboratory that can do aflatoxin testing. What we have done in the past is simply send samples to a laboratory in Singapore or Europe and get the certification that way. I think that one in particular is not an urgent priority. What I would like to see in terms of inspection for toxins in food right away is what the Taiwanese are doing with a rapid bioassay technique for detecting pesticide residues in the vegetables. And now the entire Taiwanese vegetable production supply chain is monitored with this inexpensive pesticide monitoring technology. Even at the supermarket, when vegetables come in from the wholesaler to the supermarket, they get tested and certified to be below the legal residue requirement. I think something like that in Cambodia would move things along very quickly, and it's one of the things that we're looking at, that Cora has been thinking about, how to get the supermarkets to insist on pesticide residue compliance with internationally accepted norms. And there's technology to do it, and it's cheap.
But you know, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our program. But I must say that in all this regulation, there's always some loophole. And I recall that Cambodia, we have palm trees, right? McNaughton. And you know, we have McNaughton. We have palm wine, palm liquor, delicious. And it won the accreditation in the European market on one exception. You know, from the regulation, they say that if, you know, that product is coming from a tree growing in the wild, therefore, by default, it is organic. And the company, Conferel, for that matter, who are making this drink and export, they are capitalizing on this legislative sort of like loophole.
Yeah, the palm trees are a difficult example because of the ownership regime. Palm trees are owned by individuals wherever they happen to be, even on somebody else's land. So it's difficult to certify. But Conferel, I mean, Conferel is a very good example. They've succeeded in getting more than one Cambodian product officially certified organic by European certifiers and getting their product on the market. And it's a success story that we all look up to and should learn from.
Yes, great. Well, Andrew, we're coming to the end of the program, as I say, and let me just say that I'm very appreciative you took the time to come.
My pleasure.
At least one thing for sure, coming from our little discussion here, is that Cambodia have the potential. We have the endowment, national endowment, with the right technical assistance, with the right technology, with the right market prospecting, Cambodia could develop this as a niche market for our agriculture. So
Cambodia has a huge opportunity in this direction. It can lead the region in high-quality food production for its own people and for the international market. It's really the key to prosperity.
Thank you, Andrew. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the end of our program, and I thank you for your taking the time to watch our show. I'll see you next week. Goodbye.